business advisors here locally in the Silicon Valley of the Bay Area. Today's webinar is hosted by myself and Helen Liu of Sunbelt Business Advisors. My name is JC Meyer. I'm the operations manager here. And we're joined by Peter Siegel, the founder of BizBen. If you don't know BizBen, you probably do, but if you don't, BizBen is one of the largest listing sites in Northern California. And as Peter will tell you through the webinar, it is expanding to the entire United States, with about 20% of his current listings being in other states. So it's a successful transition that he's making. But here as an office, it is one of the major sites that we use to list and successfully find buyers for our seller clients. We're also joined today by Helen Liu, as I mentioned, and she is our principal broker and the owner here of the office. And with that, Helen, I'll turn it over to you.
For some of you, who are not familiar with the Sunbelt, Sunbelt actually is the largest U.S. and also international business brokerage platform. So we actually have probably about 3 billion listings at any given time. And our Sunbelt office in Silicon Valley has been serving the local community about 22 years now. So we have a long-rooted history in the local community. And we have about 5 agents that's serving the clients. And we have a wide variety of industries we cover. So we're really excited to have Peter join us for today's webinar because, Peter, as the owner of BizBen is one of the important, listing sites we put our listings. And he can share a lot of perspective, what he can see from a different angle about the current market and especially, post-COVID. So without further ado, Peter, welcome to our webinar.
Thank you, JC. Thank you, Helen. It's good to be back to webinars online and to be with you guys. I appreciate being here. My name is Peter Siegel. Again, I'm the founder and director of BizBen.com, located here in Northern California. Like JC was saying, we have expanded on a national basis. As of 8 months ago, we determined during the pandemic that it would be a good idea to expand and go national after a lot of requests by users, brokers, agents, etc., that they would love to have the format on a national basis. So we have kind of expanded as well. BizBen also provides what we call our pro buy and pro sell program for buyers, sellers, agents, and brokers, which is a little bit more like a consulting service. We found that a lot of buyers, sellers, agents, and brokers need assistance with online search, with outreach, etc. So we do offer those programs. People can outreach to me direct if they need more information about that. I've contributed to about 300 articles, blog posts, and discussions on BizBen. I love to write content and educate buyers and sellers as well too. I think it's a very integral, important part to buying and selling small businesses. And also too, starting next month, I highly invite and encourage everyone to attend our online sessions. They'll be Wednesdays at noon. I know Helen will be joining us, right, Helen?
Yes, I will.
Where we'll be talking about different topics on buying and selling businesses. We'll have interviews with interesting advisors, all on the topic of buying and selling businesses. Myself, I have over 40 years of business transaction experience. BizBen itself has been up online about 26 years. We actually started as a newspaper about 30 years ago. We're in bookstores and all of those good things. What I'd love to do too is if we have questions, feel free to ask questions as we move along. I do have a presentation that will last about 30 minutes, but I love give and take. So if you do have questions on something, feel free to fire those. And then JC and Helen, if you want to monitor those and just ask or interrupt me, I'd be happy to do that. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the overview of the current market, what's going on. That's usually the first question I get from potential coaching clients is, how is it right now? And, we've come through a lot in the last 2-3 years, right? With the pandemic and all of that just yucky stuff. So sellers now are starting to come, what I'm finding is the sellers are starting to come back in the marketplace. They kind of hunkered down for a long time. They wanted to kind of get their books in order. They were taking out loans, PPP and otherwise, to exist and to grow. And they're starting to come back a little bit. That's what I'm finding. We are finding more buyers are coming back as well too, but they're a little bit more cautious. Especially with the markets being down so much and there's uncertainty in the marketplace. So they're coming back. So what does that mean for sellers? That means that you should be prepared with good books and records and provable documents that kind of prove your cash flow and other important financials. Also too, sellers have more, sellers need to possibly offer more seller financing at this time. SBA financing is coming back online. However, they're still kind of finding their footing. And I'm going to talk more about SBA loans as well in this talk today. But SBA lenders are coming back, but you got to be really careful about which lender organizations you go to. What I'm finding is in my consulting is that a lot of the back offices at SBA lenders have been highly affected. Just like a lot of other businesses that are hunting for qualified employees, SBA lenders are doing the same thing. So what I'm finding from a lot of clients and referrals is that their deals are getting bogged down on the closing portion of the financing. So when you do go to get an SBA lender, that's one consideration. So, and we've got all of these factors right now. We've got the war going on in Ukraine, we've got gas prices, we've got high inflation, COVID coming out of that. So there are always cycles in buying and selling businesses. And all of the current cycles right now really look to a down market, but there is optimism with both buyers and sellers right now that they really do want to do deals. So again, we see both buyers and sellers coming out or into the marketplace. Some of the minor things that have gone on is, we've had Easter, Passover, also too, we've had tax time here. So the markets have been down the last 2 or 3 weeks. I get brokers calling me saying, I've been busy, but it's been kind of quiet the last 2 or 3 weeks. Well, that's kind of what's going on. And buyers and sellers have to take that into consideration as well too, as we have these micro adjustments in the buying process as well too. So that's kind of an overview of the market. If you have certain questions, I'd love to hear about that. If there's any questions about the general overview of the market, love to hear it.
We did have one come in, Peter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's anonymous. In the past 1 year, which sector or sectors had the most buyer's interest, excluding non-retail, hospitality, and services sectors?
Well, I'm seeing two, and I was going to explore this in my talk, but I will talk about this just in general right now. So I'm seeing two high interest areas. I'm seeing e-commerce, number one, and health-oriented based businesses like home health and hospice. As the population is getting older, seeing a lot more people kind of delving into those arenas. So those are the two areas that I'm seeing a lot of high interest in. There are others, and then in my talk, we'll go over those as well too.
What I want to add is that it could be an interest that has been there for a long time, but many people are looking for manufacturer. So any kind of a manufacturing facilities, I think there's always a lot of interest.
Yeah, that's a good point, Helen. What you typically get from the manufacturing are a lot of those people are people coming out of corporate America who are familiar with the manufacturing processes and that they want to transition into something like that. Those are the same type of people that are looking for businesses with high cash flow, and I identify high cash flow of being over 100,000, right? Especially here in the Bay Area where the cost of living is quite high, you're going to need cash flow of at least north of 100,000 to be of some interest. So you're absolutely right. Manufacturing, service, wholesale, those will always be important industries for people coming out of corporate America.
So you mentioned e-commerce is a great industry right now, or high demand. Do you notice if a lot of the e-commerce, does that include businesses that maybe pre-COVID And then during COVID, they had to get their business online to do new things to stay alive, and now are doing internet transactions. Do you notice a lot of businesses that were once brick and mortar that maybe have now gone to e-commerce and are able to qualify that way for buyer interest?
Now, I would say a lot more, because a lot of those businesses, to survive, they had to move over into e-commerce.
Yeah.
So now they're transitioning that with selling the business and making that a big factor for the sales process. And I think it's just going to move more and more into that direction. Probably 30 or 40% of my clients, e-commerce is at the top of their list. But I do have a fun story about that as well as we continue. So.
And we do have another question that came in. Have deal structures changed in any way? Any new creative structures that you've come across?
Yeah, when I coach my clients, I talk to them about pricing and deal structures. Too many clients, you guys probably see this as well too at Sunbelt, is that too many buyers get hung up on pricing. And I tell my clients that deal structure is probably as important or more important than price. So you have to look at a deal organically and look at the entire structure. So deal structures have changed a lot, especially when COVID was around and SBA lenders basically took off from the market to concentrate on PPP loans. So you had a lot more deal structures where owners had to step up and they had to take back a note, or they had to finance the deal, etc. Even buyouts now are getting hot, where there's some kind of a creative buyout structures, based on income, based on net or cash flow, etc. So yeah, creative structures are definitely trending, and deal structures now with the SBA lenders kind of back online. That's kind of in the mix. However, there is one thing. Most SBA loans are variable loans. They're not fixed rate loans. So with SBA loans, as the rates start to get higher, there's going to be more dependence on seller carry notes and other non-SBA loans. So that's kind of a trend here in the future.
So do you see more non-SBA loans coming into the arena now?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, and in my consulting, I do a lot of that, or a combination with SBA loans, like 401k conversions on retirement plans, factoring that money in, potentially looking at real estate and pulling some of the equity out of that real estate and leaning on that for the down payment. But you have to be careful about that too, because there's ratios with SBA lenders. You don't want to pull all the money out for the down payment, because personal liquidity comes into view as well too, and that's one of the 20 different factors for SBA loans that lenders look at. So you got to be careful with that. But yes, third-party financing is becoming more real, especially with the SBA loans and the rates moving up.
Given the current market, have the valuation parameters and multiples changed?
Oh, this is such a tough one. This is a whole webinar unto itself. And this is really a tough one too. Business valuations are really important. And for anyone that doesn't know, SBA loans are based on third-party appraisals. That's part of the process now because of fraud that went on in the 80s and the 90s with the SBA. So you need a third-party valuation, which is actually performed by a lender's vendor. And valuations now are all over, and there's different theories now based on, well, how were the revenues during the pandemic and how do they play out now that the pandemic is kind of over? So, it's not a hard and fast rule. For example, a lot of lenders will average what happened during the pandemic, maybe look at what happened in 2019, and then perhaps look at, how are numbers trending now on an interim basis. So all lenders are looking at this in a different way. But yeah, valuations are it's hard. It's really, really difficult right now.
Right, just the point to add that I think a lot of times people don't realize valuation is really based on history. right? History of similar transactions in the past, and also history of your own cash flow. There's really no crystal ball to the future, even for a really experienced appraiser. So I think that just makes the valuation very hard. In a changing time like this, right?
Yeah, and it's a good point, Helen, because what a lot of borrowers don't realize with lenders, SBA lenders, et cetera, they really don't look at the future earnings because anything can happen in the future, right? So they only look at either 2 years or 3 years. It's the financial institution's set of guidelines, and they're all different. It's not the same with each SBA lender. They're all different. So they're governed by the SBA, but they're all different. But they ask about the future, but that is never part of the underwriting process.
Yeah, they ask for it, but they don't put that much weight on it.
Very little.
Right.
That makes sense. In-house when we do our valuations, we don't, unless it's an M&A deal, a large deal, we don't really do any projections for future financials. And so valuations done in-house here do go off strictly history, because once you get to SBA, they will do a valuation, and we want our valuation to be as closely aligned to what they're going to find, so that there's no surprises in the end. So it's good for sellers to know that we can project as much as we want, but when it comes down to it, when a buyer is going to buy the business and they're going through SBA, that it's the history that matters the most on those.
That's it. And it's the last 2 or 3 years that really make the difference. And also the trend line. Are revenues going up? Are they going down? Are they staying even? And that's why those interim financials, this first quarter of 22, are so important, because lenders are going to want to see that. So, and you want to keep those numbers up as well too, because sometimes these SBA loans can take anywhere from 2 months on a good side to 6 months, 7 months, right? So and they have to have the most current 2 months of interims, or within 2 months, excuse me. So you want to make sure that when you sell a business, you keep those numbers up as well.
Absolutely. In the under 5 million transactions, how common are earnout buyouts, and how do these impact the broker's commission fees?
Yeah, what I'm seeing typically is that the earnouts are typically on over $1 million in asking price. That's typically, but it's very rare. It's probably, I would say, maybe 15% at the most where earnouts come into play. But we're going to, again, like I said, we're going to start seeing more of this as SBA loans get a little bit tighter as far as the interest rates start inching up and everything. You're going to start seeing some more creativity. So now above 5 million, there's a lot of this in play. So it's on the smaller deals where there's just not that much creativity. So, and then I see the question is and how do they impact the broker's commission fees? That really varies. That's tough to say, and that's probably another webinar unto itself as well. So,
are you looking to linking up angels to possible opportunities on your site?
Yeah, good question. So possibly in the future. So there's really no investments on BizBen. It's strictly buyouts. Right? So there's no investments or those types of transactions. So it might be a little bit more difficult with angels. However, BizBen has some exciting stuff coming up here in the future. Probably this summer, we've got a whole slew of new kinds of tools and features on the site. But I don't think we'll ever have angels.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, business brokerages, typically we're not investment consultants. We sell 100% of the business, 100% of the company to the buyer. So that's more of an investment, question, I think. But yeah, so BizBen and the types of websites that brokerage offices go through are typically for just straight purchase acquisitions type of deals.
That's right, and also too with SBA loans, it's a straight buyouts. It's never investment oriented as well too. So when you do SBA loans, they want straight buyouts. It's not investments or investment inside of a company.
There could be a different set of legal rules involved too for investments, right?
You're exactly right. And that's one of the reasons why we don't do it, because it's pretty onerous as far as investments. You got to really be careful with that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, those are the questions we have so far. So let's move along, Peter.
Okay, sounds good. So in my coaching, there are some considerations for buyers that I wanted to bring up today and just kind of talk about. Number one is when I'm talking to buyers, I usually ask them, what types of industries or types of businesses are you interested in buying? And I usually get one or two responses. Either I will only buy e-commerce businesses, that's all I want, end of story, or I'm open, whatever it is. And you want to be somewhere in the middle. You don't want to really just focus on one type of business. You want to know kind of what businesses you're interested in, maybe because of your background or where you're going in the future, etc. But don't lock in, and I'll tell you why. In about 80% of the cases, if a client comes in and they say, I just want to buy an e-commerce business, and I'll give you an example. Going back to earlier in our conversation, had a client who said, I will only buy an e-commerce business because we want something that's absentee run, et cetera, and that would fit it. Well, I just find out today that they're looking at premium yogurt shops that are absentee run. It fits all the criteria that they're looking at, but it's not e-commerce. And I can't tell you how many times where a buyer will come in and say, I want to buy this type of business. And by the end of the process, they have bought something entirely different. And I'm sure, JC and Helen, you find that with your Sunbelt practice as well, too.
Right. Generally, probably 90% of our business is sell-side business. The key reason for that, I think, is, because of the sites like BizBen, the information is so available out there. So especially educated buyers, I think they can easily just go on to like a BizBen, search for the type of business they want. And I totally agree with you. We have some buyers sometimes come to us, say, I just want, for example, car wash. And I just want a car wash in Silicon Valley. My gosh, how many car washes are available in Silicon Valley, right? At the beginning, I think, especially in the early stage of the buyer searches, sometimes they are more fixated on something, but gradually, I think they will learn that there are more opportunities available.
You're exactly right. So the bottom line is just be open to other types of businesses. The other thing too, on the other side of the spectrum, is to tell a broker or an agent that you're working with is, I'm open. I'll buy any type of business. So usually with a client like that, I learned this back in my brokering days many moons ago, I would say, okay, so if you're open to anything, I have a restaurant that's losing a ton of money. Would you like to make an offer? Oh, no, I don't want that. Well, of course not. So really have it doesn't have to be specifics, but again, manufacturing, distribution, restaurant, hospitality, just try and narrow it down at least to something before you work with an agent or broker, so they have some kind of path to go down. All right, another thing, you don't want to say to a broker, again, I don't care what it is, as long as it's making money. And any geographic area will do. You really want to focus on kind of what you want. In fact, I encourage all buyers to do what I call a buyer profile or a buyer resume, and list kind of what you're looking for, where you're looking for it, and also too, kind of how much money you have for an injection or down payment, your personal liquidity, if you've been pre-approved for financing, whether it be SBA or third-party financing, all of those considerations. And it's always interesting because buyers will say, well, I don't want to give all that information away. I mean, that's negotiating power, right? I don't want to do that. And I always tell buyers, look, you wear the pants in the transaction, right? If you don't like something, you don't have to move forward. But at least you're giving people, important parties, this information to start the process. Because it's not only the agent or broker that's going to need this information, it's also going to be the financial institution like the SBA lender. They're going to need that information. The landlord is going to need that information. A lot of parties in the transaction are going to want and need that information. So you want to do a buyer profile or buyer resume and have that go back with all non-disclosure agreements to agents, brokers, and owners. Okay, very, very important. Also too, the other item that's highly needed is personal financial statements. Make sure you have that one as well, because another horrible thing you can say to an agent or broker when they say, well, how much money do you have for a down payment? And you tell them, don't worry, I've got enough. And all agents and brokers that are on this call are cringing right now because they've all heard those buyers. It's the worst thing you can say, because usually an agent or broker, if you don't acquiesce and let them know, will just say, yeah, that's fine. I'll call you if something comes in. You will never hear from that agent or broker again. See, I'm getting a laugh from JC, so I know I'm on the right track. So you want to make sure that you want to be transparent, you have all the information up front, otherwise you're just going to spin your wheels and waste a lot of time. So that's what we call the protocol of buying a business. So
right. And more so, as Helen mentioned, 90% of our deals are sell side because the information for listed businesses is so available online for buyers. But yeah, we do a buyer profile in-house whenever a buyer signs an NDA, and it's for the specific reason of also when, we are responsible for bringing qualified buyers to our sellers, just like we're responsible for bringing qualified businesses to buyers. We want to make sure that when the buyer and the seller connect, that it's going to have as little hiccups as possible, that you're pre-qualified in a way where we know that you are able to buy this business, that you have the right experience when it comes down to it, and your motivation for wanting this particular listing or this particular industry. So that's not only helpful for brokers, but the reason why you may not be taken as seriously if you don't have a buyer profile filled out is because it doesn't help us vet you to the seller who we're representing. So it's very important.
Good point. And you also want that for future reference. For example, a lot of brokers and agents, when they go out on listing appointments, will have the seller say, look, I don't want to sign a listing agreement right now, but if a qualified buyer comes along someday,
yes,
we will do what's called a one-off transaction, where if that particular buyer comes in and they buy my business, I'll be happy to pay a commission. That happens a lot. And when I was a business broker, I would go out and sellers would say that to me, and probably 60 to 70% of my transactions at that time were with those conditions. And that's what I call the gray market. It's not dealing with older sellers. It's just deals in this gray market where brokers and agents put these deals together without a listing agreement. It's absolutely huge. So what I encourage buyers to do as well too is get that buyer profile completed, be transparent as possible, and then also post that information on BizBen as a wanted posting. That's one thing that BizBen has, or one of many things that BizBen has that a lot of other sites don't, and that's wanted postings. So you want to post what you're looking for as well too. And I can't tell you how many agents and brokers actually look at buyers on BizBen when they go out to get a listing or after they've got a listing to see what buyers are there and have actually put together deals. In fact, a broker in Southern California 3 weeks ago just earned a $70,000 commission because he found a buyer for a garage door company up in Northern California. So it's very important that you also brand yourself as a buyer and get the word out about what you want. And agents and brokers can do the same thing, but they need to put all the information from the buyer profile on, not the buyer's name or contact information, but on as well, because there are a lot of brokers and agents who peruse BizBen for buyers for their listings. So that's really, really an important point to do.
on your site, do you have a way to directly identify businesses that might be interested in partnering with a third party for whatever reason, i.e. capital, cash flow, strategic value, growth, etc.?
We don't, again, because it comes back to not usually a full buyout, that's usually a partnership. And there's rules and regs for partnerships and investments, and we just don't want to go there. So we really don't have anything on BizBen for that. All right, let's get to sellers. What are we seeing for sellers in the marketplace? Okay, one of the main things that sellers can do right now is to get pre-qualified for financing. I'm sure JC and Helen, you guys do this at Sunbelt, but when you get a new listing, you need to get that pre-qualified for SBA financing, third-party financing, but figure it out before. Too many times when a deal comes in, you get an offer, they start, putting it out to financial institutions, and it's not SBA qualified to do the deal for a lot of different reasons. So sellers, make sure you get your business pre-qualified for some type of financing.
From your perspective, how many sales do you see that are cash sales and don't use any type of loan or SBA financing?
You really need to probably segment on how big the businesses are. So probably deals that are selling for under 100,000, you're probably looking at a majority of them are being paid in cash. If you're looking at deals that are priced, let's say 250 and above, you're probably looking at a big majority of them being financed. And the reason for that is because a lot of buyers want to leverage their cash and get third-party financing.
Yeah. Quick point on this is we pre-qualify, all of our deals at the beginning. So the reason for that, actually, I feel that SBA lenders review is also a good second check for the valuation. So if the business cannot support a certain level of loan, they may not be valued correctly.
Correct. And that's one of the features in both the pro buy and pro sell programs on BizBen is getting the deals pre-qualified. That's really important. And then also for agents and brokers who are advertising on BizBen, make sure you say if it's been SBA pre-qualified. That's one of the tools that you can use on BizBen and check that it's been pre-qualified for financing. So when you're searching, if you want to leverage your money and buy it with an SBA loan, you can actually filter off of that as well too. But you want to play that up. That's absolutely huge, because what that does is that opens up the entire pool of buyers for the listing as well too. So, which is absolutely huge. So
on BizBen, there's a checkbox when we're creating a listing that we check off for SBA pre-approved, right?
That's right. It's called an attribute.
So that attribute is that. So are you saying that buyers have the ability in there when they put together a search for types of businesses they're looking for, that they can check mark that attribute for the results that they find in their search?
That's correct. They can do that. And in fact, we find we optimize each posting on BizBen before it goes out to BizBen users. And we find a lot of people entering postings on BizBen, it'll say in the ad copy, it'll say SBA pre-approved, but they won't check that box. So what that means is if a user uses the filter of saying, yeah, I only want SBA pre-approved loans, it's not going to come up in the search results. So you got to be very careful with those attributes. This is really important. And you don't want to check off all of the attributes thinking, well, I'll get everybody, right? Because first of all, it's going to be flagged. And second of all, when you're doing a search and you click on all the attributes, that means you want a business with all of these attributes. There is no business with all the attributes. So be very careful on the flip side as well when you search and you use the filters. So
don't overuse them, huh?
Don't overuse them. Be judicious, but be correct. All right. The next point, if you're selling a business, make sure your financials and tax returns are up to date. Nothing will drive a buyer crazy if the tax returns aren't done or the interim financials are not ready. So be ready with that. just have it done, because not only will the buyer want them, everybody else will want them too. SBA lenders, other due diligence experts, et cetera, that are helping in the transaction, they're all going to want to see those. So make sure that you have those all up to speed. That's really important. So
Yeah, we concur.
if you, another situation is, and we'll address this a little bit, is if you do go with a broker or agent, you want to make sure that broker or agent is cooperating with other agents and brokers on the listing. This is kind of a hot topic now in the marketplace and has been for a while, especially here in the California marketplace. You want to just make sure that the broker or agent is cooperating with others on the deal. So that's really important. We talked about pricing and how important that is, but deal structure is probably equally or more important, especially when third-party financing is involved. Because if the deal structure doesn't make sense and it doesn't cash flow, or something's not set correctly, you're not going to get SBA or third-party financing. The PPP loans and all those other fun government loans that were with us during COVID, those are going to need to be paid off before financing is actually utilized and funded. So sellers, if you have those, make sure you have enough cash flow and everything to pay those off, because before it's funded, they will need to be proven to be paid off. So that's another missing component that has slowed up a lot of deals in the last quarter, is those outstanding loans with companies. A lot of the PPP loans were forgiven, and that's fine, but there are other loans too as well that you have to take into consideration.
So Pete, are you saying that at the point of allocation of purchase price, when we're going through escrow, that money can't be allocated to pay off a previous PPP loan, that it has to be closed, that it has to be paid off before that happens?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And also too, in my consulting, I've actually had, which you got to watch out for too, it's probably on the buy side, is where people have gotten PPP loans and have actually booked that income. So it looks like earned income, and then they drop it to the bottom line or cash flow. So you can't do that. So as far as representation, be very careful how your CPA or bookkeepers actually book that income, because that's not actually earned income.
Yeah, I think especially for 2020, there was some confusion for a while, how to treat that, the PPP money. So I had one client where the CPA actually advised them to take that PPP money against an expense to reduce the expense. So of course, when next year comes around, then you have really like a 100,000 difference in that particular expense. So then people start to question. So there's that a little bit of cleaning up to do, I think, for people who use the PPP money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, in general, Peter, sorry, are you noticing that lenders are still looking at 2020 as an anomalous year in financials and are skipping over that when doing their evaluation in-house, or is that not the case anymore?
They are, but the valuations are actually done out of house by a third-party vendor, controlled by the SBA lender. So they'll refer it out to somebody that they have vetted that does business valuations. And so what they typically look at is trend lines. Is it going down still? Is it going up? And then you've got this threshold of about 10 or 15%. So if it's only gone down about 10 to 15%, you're in the safe zone. But it really depends on the type of business as well too, because there are certain industries that were hit really hard with COVID. So if you're within that industry, they're not going to be as critical of that. If the trend line is even and then the interims are going back up, you're probably okay. But if you're down, 20, 30, 40% and it's continuing to go down, you're probably not going to get a loan.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit about trends, industries, and features, because that will just give us some time for more questions and answers. And I want a lot of those, you guys, so start gearing up your questions. What am I'm seeing from buyers again? I'm seeing a lot more buyers who want semi-absentee or absentee run businesses. I don't know, JC and Helen, if you're seeing that as well too, but I'm seeing a lot of that. So, I ask my clients, well, what's the appeal of that? And of course, that's the pipe dream of a lot of people, or, they pick up Inc. magazine and they read about some entrepreneur that bought a absentee run business and now they're earning six figures while they're on the beach somewhere or something. It typically doesn't happen, people. To find a quality absentee run small business, that's earning great money is typically a pipe dream. And if it's out there, it will probably be sold within 2 or 3 days, because that is the dream of everybody coming out of corporate America and buying a business, is that it's absentee. But what a lot of people are doing is, there's, because of COVID, they've stayed home to work from home and they want something else to do. So they're thinking, okay, well, I'll buy a coin laundromat. I can repair things, so I'll buy a coin laundry, and I can go down there occasionally and fix the machines and buy and have an additional income stream. But it very rarely happens. So I have to coach my clients and say, look, if you want something like that, you're going to want to put in a wanted posting and get the word out, because you're going to want to get as many people as possible, because you've got a lot of competition in that space. So that's one trend I'm seeing, is a lot of people looking for semi-absentee or absentee run businesses. So if you're a seller and you want to sell your business, that's awesome. So
that's a great point too, Peter. And I would say that's kind of why we encourage our seller clients maybe to start talking to us 2 or 3 years before they want to sell their business, because maybe we can help and coach and look at certain things where, that can be something that you transition into, so that your listing is more desirable. As Peter's saying, the absentee, everybody wants that. Who wouldn't want that, right? But it's the unicorn in the industry. It's a rare creature, and so to try to find that's hard. And so as a seller, if you can get your business to be semi-absentee by the time you're ready to pass the torch on to someone who will carry it to the next phase of its life, that's going to be very beneficial for you, and you will be the unicorn in the crowd of wild horses out there. So just putting a plug out there for you sellers, if you are thinking of selling in the next 2 or 3 years, start talking to us now. We don't pressure you to sell when you're not ready, and we'll be by your side to give you advice and help you, so that by the time you do list and you're ready to list, it looks as good as possible and attracts as many buyers as possible.
Yeah, that is an important. Sorry, Peter. It is an important point, because sometimes we have sellers who come to us saying, this is the industry I've been in for so long, and I manage this so well, but then we find out they're involved in every little details of the business. They're almost irreplaceable, right?
Yeah.
Then that's going to make the business really hard to sell, because if somebody else replace that person, may not be at the same level of operation it used to be. So that's going to be a hit on the business value.
Yep. Another factor that buyers are looking for too is businesses with few or less employees. And we all know at this particular time, it's harder to get employees, and good employees, like restaurants, retail, etc. So if a business is running lean and mean and they don't need employees all the time, it's going to be higher in demand. That's what I'm hearing from a lot of buyers. I find a lot of buyers are also partnering up with a lot of friends and associates to buy a business. But a caveat on that is I usually find when buyers start partnering up, they take longer to buy a business, or they usually fail at buying a business because they have to get the buy-in from all the partners to buy the business, and it typically doesn't go well. So if you are looking at with various people, kind of be careful with that. Usually what ends up happening is the lead partner who's really hot about buying a business usually just takes the lead and buys a business by themselves. It's usually what I find about 75% of the cases. The last thing I want to say too is trends is buyers, when you're reaching out, communication skills are really important. And agents and brokers and owners are busy people. They have lives. And when you reach out, I advise my clients on the buy side to not only call the broker or agent, but also email them and text them. Now, Helen and JC are probably, oh, no, way too much. Don't do that, please. But I'll ask my clients, because I get calls from buyers in a rage saying, this broker's not returning my phone call. What's the deal? I can't believe they haven't called me back in 2 hours. Well, first of all, you're probably not going to get a call until, the next day or something. Again, everybody has a life. But I tell them the best practices is to both email, call, and text. If you're really, really interested in a listing, reach out on all fronts to get that either agent, broker, or owner to contact you back. So those are the things.
And then you get to talk to me when you call in. So I'm all for it.
Added bonus right there.
And a lot of times we have the opposite, right? The people incurred online, we get the message, they're interested. Then we send out the email, we follow up with phone call, then nothing happens. They don't return our call.
Yeah.
So in that case, then maybe we try twice, but then that's it, because it just shows us maybe you're not that interested.
Well, and that's the worst thing too. You're right, Helen, because I tell buyers, look, it's a two-way street. You want them to call, but when they reach out to you and you don't, and you're in their CRM or database and you're not returning their phone call, do you think if they get a hot listing, they're going to reach out to you? I don't think so. So communication's a two-way street. So even if you aren't interested, just speak up and let them know why you're not interested. End of story. Don't ghost somebody. Yeah. Just do that. And that goes along the same lines of when you go out to see a listing or meet an owner or something, and you just don't get back to the agent or broker. You just ghost them and there's no feedback. It's one of three things. It's either you're not interested, you have a question, or you're making an offer. So, again, if you want to get the quality listings and you want to get in that gray zone of listings that may not be on the market, but an agent or broker might know about them, be really good about communicating with that agent or broker.
We keep good notes.
Yeah.
So we've got about 10 minutes left of the webinar. We do have another question here. I kind of want to get out there and then let you kind of wrap it up, Peter. But so we were talking about people want absentee, semi-absentee businesses, but in the same light, how about remotely managed businesses?
Now, I'm going to say remotely managed businesses would probably be the same as an absentee run. Wouldn't you think, JC?
I would agree.
Okay. So probably on BizBen, I would say probably 20% are either coded as a semi-absentee or absentee run business.
And follow up on that for me, what about businesses that are sole owner operator, so no employees?
Probably about I'd probably say about 20 or 25%, especially for businesses that have revenues, let's say under 250,000, somewhere in there. A lot of them they're probably sole owners.
Do you think that that's a selling point for buyers, or do you think that's something they run from?
It depends, it really does, because a lot of buyers feel that, hey, I don't want employees, especially, here in California with all the regulations and everything. I just want to run this myself. Yeah. And I can bring something to the table and grow this business, where other buyers, you're right, that's a turnoff. It's like, hey, I want a staff in place. I want to take a vacation for 2 weeks. I want someone to be able to step in and run the business. So I'm not interested. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, our experience is that for a sole operator, it's been pretty hard to sell, to find the buyer. I think the buyer group is limited for that type of business. Yeah, usually, the seller probably has some kind of special skill, right, at the one thing. And then you need to find another person who's equally as good at that special skill. So it's quite hard. Our experience shows that.
Yeah, I think it depends too on the industry and the type of business, because I do have buyers out there that are looking at businesses that maybe with, like, let's say one owner or one operator, but they can scale up that business and put staff in place as well and grow it. So,
But you think they need to do that before the sale, or they can
no,
sell then?
it's after the fact, but then pricing comes in, right, Helen? If they can get it at a good price and everything with the factors and doing a pro forma of growing the business after the fact, then it may be worth it.
Okay. So then the buyer needs to have a vision for that business, right?
Absolutely, and all buyers should have a vision for the business they're buying. You know, step 1, step 2, step 3.
That's
right?
true.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if the sales price of a solo owner operator business, let's say it's a listing that's been around for a while and hasn't gotten much traction, if decreasing the price and with the idea that the price is being decreased so that a new owner can hire somebody to assist, maybe that's a tactic that can be used to help sell single owners.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
All right, we've got 5 minutes left, folks. And I do want to say, first of all, thank you to everybody who's been asking questions. It's really made this webinar very interesting and gotten a lot of great information from Peter. So thank you very much. And please, if you do have another question, submit it now. If we can't get to it, we will email you a response after the webinar. But with that, Peter, go ahead and take us out if you would in the last 5 minutes here.
Absolutely. JC, Helen, I want to thank you for hosting this. It's been a really fun time being able to impart a limited part of my wisdom in this hour. I highly encourage people too to reach out to me at BizBen if you'd like to see different features or tools on BizBen, or if you would like to participate in our Pro Buy or Pro Sell program. We would love to have you. Again, we've got a whole slew of interviews and our webinars, internal webinars coming up in May. So those will be on the website, but I highly encourage people to reach out to me.
So Peter, really quick, for the the podcast or the webinar you're going to host, is that open to everybody?
That's open to everyone. Yeah, I call it, it's open up to the BizBen network, and anybody can partake and come in and enjoy. My big thing, Helen, is education. And I think the more we educate buyers and sellers, the more transactions we're going to do. I mean, that's just the way it is for the industry. And the industry, I feel traditionally has kind of closed down and hasn't educated buyers and sellers as well as I think they can. So that's why I want to open these, what we call webinar live podcasts, up on Wednesdays at noon. We call them nooners, with interviews and questions and answers, and have dialogue like we're having today.
Okay, great. Yeah, I found the information on BizBen probably is more available, or there's a variety of information there, much more than other sites.
Thank you. Yep, we pride ourselves on that, and we encourage agents and brokers to share their content on BizBen as well too. So.
Okay, yeah, we can talk offline how we can be part of that community. Yeah.
Absolutely. Good. Well, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. And to all the attendees, this is being recorded. It will be uploaded to our webinar database on our website, sunbeltbayarea.net. But because you've attended, you will also receive a link through email from us with a link to the video in case you missed any parts of it, had to step away or came late. And again, thank you so much, Peter, for joining us today. It's been a pleasure and an honor to have you on our webinar and share your knowledge, knowing that we really do appreciate your site as a brokerage office here in the Silicon Valley, and use your site very much with our listings and for data and things like that. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the kind words. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
Bye now.
Bye, folks. Thank you again for joining. Bye-bye.
Bye.